what I'm going to be covering in my section is less about like Patrick Bateman himself, but more like the people who idolize him, as well as like, I guess the rich white men that maybe he embodies in a lot of ways. So the film is a commentary on many things, but most glaringly the ego of rich white men who have never experienced consequences for their actions and struggle to grasp reality, or like what right and wrong is, or like who they are, or what it is to exist and be a person. So there's a lot to be said just specifically about like what this is saying about male ego, but specifically white male ego, and it's more specifically rich white men male ego. Yeah. So basically, the world of American capitalism rewards men who act like Patrick Bateman, or at the very least protects them after they've committed heinous and blatant atrocities. They're going to clean up that house. 100%. They're like, no murder took place. What do you mean? You can't be a murderer. Everyone needs to think you're just a nice guy.
Yeah. It's like, those weren't people. That was the help.
Yeah. Rich people don't do bad stuff. They're the pillars of morality, friends. So the character of Patrick Bateman, in the unfunny element of it, like he's a joke of a man in the film, but like who he represents in real life is actually what's scary. So he embodies these intersections between consumerism, capitalism, white supremacy, and toxic masculinity. So like the real men that exist, like the one that's mentioned many times throughout the film, Donald Trump, are the scary ones, because like they're the ones actually out there doing horrible stuff and not getting consequences at all for those actions. So in an article titled "How Money Changes the Way You Think and Feel," I basically found a bunch of stuff that talks about how wealth influences the human brain and how it further disconnects people from each other and their capacity for empathy, happiness, etc., as well as genuine like human connection. Because the things you have to do to become a rich person, specifically in America, detach you from genuine human connection, because what's rewarded is inauthenticity instead of authenticity. So in this article on berkeley.edu's Greater Good magazine, they outline the ways wealth impacts the human mind. The article outlines that because of the privileges that wealth affords, wealthy people generally have less empathy for their fellow human, have clouded moral judgment, are more likely to exhibit addictive behavior, more likely to pursue additional wealth and like luxury items at a compulsive level, that children who grow up wealthy are often more anxious, depressed, and isolated emotionally, and that in general, wealthy people experience social isolation, and that the achievement of economic success oftentimes brings people further from happiness and genuine love. The lack of empathy ties back to the absence of the need to depend on other humans for their basic everyday survival. Operating in a lower social economic bracket often necessitates it takes a village mentality. It necessitates connection to other human beings for survival, and therefore makes people more aware of what other humans are doing. So working with your fellow human to achieve survival and safety. Money removes that necessity for dependence, and because of this, the acknowledgement of others fundamentally changes. It's more observational and less survival. So you get the man who's in the house covered in plastic and he's like, I'm safe. Yeah, I am me. Nothing else exists but me. In his mind, he's just like floating through the air, just screaming me. So understanding the facial expressions, body cues, and other physical indicators of the environment around them and their safety are not relevant for wealthy individuals who, because of their wealth, are not faced with the active threat of death. They're not actively worrying like if they're going to be unhoused, And the influence,
and they can live forever, they have the money to be able to extend their life. Literally.
Yeah, they don't have to deal with like common illnesses because they have the money to pay for all the medicines or whatever, or like the cutting edge new technology or whatever.
Yeah, we saw that with COVID.
Yeah,
right?
That's a whole thing. So the influence of wealth also changes our understandings of like needs versus wants, because you are not in this like fight or flight need for survival mentality. Your prioritization of like what you need versus what you want are going to be more superficial. You're not going to be like, oh, I need to find food. You're going to be like, oh, my business card needs to be ivory with a specific indentation, because that's the most important thing in the entire world, because like their concept of like existence does not prioritize survival. Essentially, it's about superficial stuff. So this detaches them further from the understanding of other humans whose actions are more motivated by survival instead of indulgence. The article goes on to say a lot of what we see is a baseline orientation that lower class individuals to be more empathetic and upper class to be less so. This co-author Michael Cross told Time that lower class environments are much different from upper class environments. Lower class individuals have to respond chronically to a number of vulnerabilities and social threats. You really need to depend on others so that they will tell you if a social threat or opportunity is coming. And that makes you more perceptive to other people's emotions. Psychologists who study the impact of wealth and inequity on human behavior have found that money can powerfully influence our thoughts and actions in ways that are often we're not aware of. No matter our economic circumstances. The UC Berkeley research found that even fake money can make people behave with less regard for others.
Okay, all money is fake.
Yes. But they're talking about like monopoly money. But yes, money isn't real. Totally valid. But researchers observed that when two students played Monopoly, one having been given a great deal more Monopoly money than the other, the wealthier player immediately expressed initial discomfort, but then went on to act aggressively, taking up more space and moving his pieces more loudly, and even taunting the other player with less money.
I've always hated playing Monopoly. It was my least. It's never been fun for me. I was like,
so
I don't
stressful.
like this.
I don't like Monopoly either.
This is a bad game.
and it's like a whole thing too, because it's like it's such a pillar of like you're growing up like in society. People are like, let's play Monopoly. I'm like, that sounds like the one. It's like the longest game ever.
Yeah.
Two, you're constantly like, why are you doing any of it? None of it matters.
Yeah. Like, why I have to pay rent houses now? Why do I want to pretend to keep paying rent other places? Like, I don't want to do that.
And like, someone steps on my property, I have to penalize. It's like a whole weird time. I've never really liked Monopoly. I find it really odd.
It was created to not be as cool as it is. Like, it was created to be like, a monopoly is a bad thing to have. And everyone's like, I love this.
Yeah, I love this. This gives me a taste of what it could be. I don't know. It's a whole time.
Yeah, like all the colonizer games. I can't.
I know. When I've discovered that my previous love of what's the game called? Oh my goodness. Catan is just probably my ancestral desire to colonize. I was like, no, I can't ever play this game again because ouch.
I can't play any of them.
Yeah.
Any of them.
No, because it's so real. And I like didn't even think about it that way. And once I saw it, I could never unsee it. So it's just what it is.
So gross.
In another article that covers the same Monopoly experiment, they elaborate that the root cause of social aggression that took place in that experiment, and in general when wealthy people receive more wealth, can be explained by the theory called social class essentialism, which is like a fancy word that basically is the rationalization that humans might grasp for when trying to understand their surroundings and why they were given so much more and other people so much less. So essentially, the article I learned this term from was called How Money Affects the Psychology of the Extremely Rich on Swaddle. In essence, it's Patrick Bateman's whole deal. When applied to inherently racist capitalistic system, it kind of compounds in that you're just like, oh, wow, I see why it's so dangerous for wealthy people to not have empathy, because like it's so much harm and bigotry and hatred can stem from that.
Because they have with the money, they have the power to actually do harm based on those ideas.
And if their whole concept of what reality is that they are superior and everyone else is less because of inherent characteristics. So I'm going to give you the whole definition of what social class essentialism is, but it refers to the belief that social classes or economic classes are inherently fixed and unchangeable, with inherent characteristics and traits associated with each class. It suggests that individual social class positions are determined by their innate qualities, abilities, or inherent characteristics, rather than external factors such as social structures, economic opportunities, or systemic inequities. It is a white supremacist viewpoint that fed into the toxic consumer culture of the 1980s and led to the I Don't See Color movement of the 90s and early 2000s. It is the reason for the nonsensical rant Bateman delivers before murdering the unhoused man in the film. And in this rant, it is clear that Bateman believes wholeheartedly in social class essentialism. He believes he is God and that everyone else who is of a lower social class deserves to be there because they're not working hard enough. They're not getting a job. They're not trying. And he is just the pinnacle of existence. So when applied to social class, essentialism assumes that people's class positions are predetermined by their essential nature. So like, you can't escape it. It is forever. So some of these things that they list are intelligence, talent, work ethic, or inherent qualities. So basically whatever class you're in means, so if you're poor, you don't work hard, you're not smart, et cetera. If you're rich, you're the smartest in town, you're so talented, you just work really, really hard. You earned your status. But also you were divinely gifted your status because you're great.
This is exactly Elon Musk, because he is not intelligent. He literally just has money, dirty, awful money, and then he sweeps in and takes somebody else's credit every single time. That's all he is.
Yeah.
Gross.
So when applied to the egos of rich white men in believing they are inherently or divinely given power, wealth, and status they enjoy, inversely, everyone else placed elsewhere are there because they are less. And this understanding of wealth and how it impacts the human brain even further validates the fact that trickle-down economics would never work in practice because there has to be care at the top for those at the bottom, which wealth removes on a scientific level.
Facts.
So also, if they believe that their class position is fixed and unalterable, they have no incentive to want to help others rise to meet them. It is a very socially isolating and like cyclical and perpetual thing. This viewpoint often implies that social mobility or movement between social classes is limited or impossible because it disregards the impact of external factors such as education, economic policies, structural inequities, and historical circumstances that shape class divisions. It suggests that individuals of lower classes are inherently deficient or lacking the qualities necessary to move up in society, while those in higher classes are inherently superior and deserving of their privileges. This is not to say that like literally every single rich person believes in social class essentialism, but that they are, because of social isolation, privilege, and lack of meaningful connection to others outside their class, more likely to struggle with wanting to support others, having empathy for others. And as humans, we are programmed to try to understand our surroundings. The belief in social class essentialism is a way for wealthy humans to rationalize their surroundings, behaviors in a world they live in, with the understanding that they think it's fair and just, which there's a whole other theory of self that's actually covered in the article I mentioned above that says that humans are like inherently more likely to think that the world around them is just or fair. So they will attempt to rationalize the things that literally aren't just or fair as there's a reason for it, to like rationalize that it ultimately is just or fair.
Like an outlier is the reason that's happening.
Yeah, exactly. It totally negates and neglects the fact that systemic things take place, that there's racism, that there's sexism, that there's all these other things, because then they'd have to like face the fact that one, they have to sacrifice their position. It's not divinely given. Two, they're going to have to be uncomfy. Three, that like they're not the best thing that's ever hit the planet. And that like their entire way of being was for no good reason. You know, like all the harm that they did, they'll have to actually face that.
Yeah. Just like the platform.
Yeah, which is inconvenient, so they don't want to. But looping back to the article titled "How Money Changes the Way You Think and Feel," Bateman's sense of entitlement is given a bit more context. His pursuits are him just taking what he feels he's entitled to, like the reservation at that restaurant that all the rich white men love, or his obsession with having the most luxury items, the most expensive apartment, among other things. And his pursuits of these things further detach him from ethical choices and care for others. So looping back to the UC Berkeley study, they found that in San Francisco, where the law requires that cars stop at crosswalks for pedestrians to pass, drivers in luxury cars were 4 times more likely than others to, more likely than people with less expensive vehicles to stop and allow pedestrians to find the right of way, seemingly sending the message that they felt they were above the law. And they were also more likely to cut off other drivers. Another study suggested that merely thinking about money could lead to unethical behavior. Specifically, researchers from Harvard and the University of Utah found that study participants were more likely to lie or behave immorally after being exposed to money-related words, which is just really interesting.
It's so funny.
Yeah. They're like, oh,
someone's like taxes, and they're like,
Ooh,
I did
lie.
not do this thing.
Yeah. I want the fake or the illusion of wealth. So sure, yeah, we're going to be bad.
So funny.
And they said even if we are well-intentioned, even if we think we know right from wrong, there may be factors influencing our decisions and behaviors that we're not aware of. Unconscious biases. So the University of Utah Associate Management Professor Kristen Smith-Crow basically outlined that unconscious biases are like scientific, ultimately. So now to tie in some of the toxic masculinity, Gabe honestly covered a lot of it, but if we're defining what toxic masculinity is, it's a set of attitudes and way of behaving stereotypically associated with or expected from men regarded as having negative impact on men and society as a whole. So patriarchy, masculinity, etc. So under toxic masculinity, men are expected to exhibit toughness. This is the notion that men should be physically strong, emotionally callous, and behaviorally aggressive. Anti-femininity. This involves the idea that men should reject anything that is considered to be feminine, such as showing emotion or accepting help, as well as like humanizing women. Power. This is the assumption that men just must work towards obtaining power and status, social and financial, so that they can gain respect from others for social acceptance. So the intersection that Bateman deals with this is his own perception of masculinity is inherently tied and intersects with his whiteness and his class. Because of his status, his perception of masculinity is tied to his wealth and his idea of what society expects from other white men like him. That's why he's a clone. And he struggles with the two ideas of fitting in and being remembered, and cloning himself to fit the expectations and the approval of the other white men around him. He becomes obsessed with having the exact same privileges, but like being on top. Having the power. And as Gabe said, his collection of blonde women is like a whole thing, because he doesn't care about the women at all, or the fact that he doesn't even care that they exist. He just wants to have power over the other men around him, or gain approval from the other men around him by being like, look at this blonde woman that I have found, or you have a blonde woman, I will take her, and that proves I am better. So all of this kind of ties back to the fact that like men who are operating under the similar wants of Bateman are doing so because of what society has like said that they're supposed to want and are supposed to be, and that it ultimately does harm them, because at the end of the day, he is a ridiculous man who is deeply unhappy, deeply angry, and never gets to like find who he could have been if not for all of those things. And like he has no depth, because depth is not what the people around him want. At any point where he actually communicates genuinely, they all look at him like he has 6 heads, and they're like, no, stop it. That's not, you've stopped putting on the facade. That's not allowed. You have to be random white man number 4. You can't be Patrick Bateman. You can't be an original human. You have to be random white man number 4. And if you stop being that, the world collapses. Everything that we have tried to build here collapses. So like you don't get the opportunity to be a genuine human at the same time. So it does inherently harm the men that hold it to such regard. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I also like thinking about his reaction, like his interactions with the women in his life. Like he does that like alpha male thing where he orders for his date, which is just like super gross. First of all, it's not cute by any means. Yeah. But also that scene where he does order for her, she is notorious, like she's known for being drugged up. Like she's constantly on
the other man's
drugs.
Wife, yes.
Yes, the other man's partner. I don't know if I don't think they're married yet. Yeah. Who also is gay. Yeah. That guy was also gay, but he has to be in the closet because he has to uphold himself to a specific role.
Have to be the heteronormative man.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that even that has a whole thing. But she is like passing out at the table. No one has anything to say. No one says anything about it. But we are led to believe that she is always in this state because whenever we see her, she's like this, and nobody around them reacts to it. So like, just no one sees each other at all. And what a lonely existence that is. And that's why I think people, but especially with like toxic masculinity, right, is that the alpha males or whatever, people who think they are one or want to be one and, you know, don't believe in toxic masculinity, like they don't understand that it hurts them too. Yeah. Right? Like the fact that Patrick Bateman cannot cry or, you know, talk about his feelings or could allow himself a day where he doesn't have to be perfect is making him also a victim of this same mentality. And that's what happens. Like, you don't have to do that. And that's why, you know, there's a higher rate of, you know, suicide among males because there's specific containment of who they are and what they're allowed to feel.
Yeah. And if you don't get your emotions out, they bubble up and do bad stuff. It's literally like cortisol leads to all these health problems and stuff too. Like, you know, like it does hurt them inherently. And just going back to the one lady that you were talking about, the whole thing with her is he was just saying how like wonderful she is because she's drugged up all the time. That's why he because she didn't talk. She literally fell asleep at the table and he thought that was like the best thing ever because then he doesn't have to do anything.
He doesn't have to perform anymore.
Yeah. He literally is performing for the room, sure, but he doesn't have to like perform for her. And it's just like, and that's what's wanted. They don't want people. The whole exchange is not for, you know, to better each other. It's literally like, I must use you as status, but also don't talk. Shh. I order for you. You sit, you sleep. It's excellent. It's the best woman that could exist.
Pretty and asleep. Yeah. I think what a great film. What a great way to end our Horrors of Society series for this year. We were originally going to talk about Drag Me to Hell because we hadn't seen it and, you know, banks are horrible. But woof, that is a movie.
Yeah, it was doing a lot. And I guess even if I think I turned off my media analysis classes, I don't know if I would have liked it. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. It was just like really ridiculous. I don't know. We tried.
And I usually have, we did try.
Yeah. And I mean, we've talked about banks before. I feel like it maybe not at length in terms of how they are very.
Not like predatory lending, but that's not what was happening. It was definitely like misaligned. Like the focus. And I don't know if it changes it. Yeah. What I would say is if that is a film that's of interest to you, I highly recommend you go check out Girl That's Scary's episode about it. They're great. They're fun to listen to as well. And they watched it so we don't have to. It's how I feel like for once they took it. And I think that's great. There's another film that I was going to watch because people were like hype about it. And then I caught wind of their feelings on it and another creator. And I was like, oh no, this is a problem. This film is very bad. And now I will not watch it because I'm going to protect myself. Yeah. And so very thankful. Definitely check out Girl That's Scary. Follow them on Twitter to get your some of your film information. Because they're a great resource for that.
Yeah. And we did another Horror of Society. Look at us do. What's next, Gabe? What's next on the train?
Next, we are, going to the future. We're living in space. Yeah. We got new technology. We have a new concept of what being is. And despite all of those really fascinating, interesting things, the core message is really sucks to be lower class. It really sucks to be minority. It really sucks to not have higher education. It really sucks to not have systemic support for your growth.
It's almost like it's almost like the theory that I talked at length about, the social class essentialism, is wrong. So if you are of wealth and you think that, do some research, because it's not how the world works.
Yeah, it's not true. Yeah. And it's so next month and for a little bit we're going to be talking about some science fiction work. Some of it is hopeful, but oftentimes it is just this look at how sad society can be. It's still going to be like a horrors of society, because that's kind of like our whole show.
Our whole show is a horrors of society series, unless we just kind of do those like random one-offs, but like also they always end up looping back to the big society, big four. I don't know.
It's terrifying.
It's scary. That's the whole thing.
So let us know what you think about American Psycho. Tell us about your red flags. If someone says American Psycho is their favorite film and it's not in the way that I would say it, that's a red flag. If they say they really love Tyler Durden, they really love Patrick Bateman, red flag, right? Same thing.
Like, they order for you, but like you didn't want them to. Red flag.
Red flag.
Like if it's not like just because you have a hard time making decisions, it's different. But if it's like, oh, you're not allowed to have opinions, that's red flag.
He's in Murders and Acquisitions, red flag. I don't know what that is. I don't know what it does. It's a red flag for me. I don't, like, there's no way. I think back to, I've only interacted with like a rich person, like someone who has a comfortable amount of wealth plus like so much more once, like for one little period of time of my life. And it was always such a weird experience for me, because it was like, you have so much money. And you didn't always have so much money, but you have been so corrupted in the short period of time to have all this money that you're like, why do you think this way? And I just remember this conversation we had where he was like, talking about one of his employees who was pregnant again. And apparently she's has like, this is like her fourth kid or something. And he's like, well, is she going to keep having babies? Like, do you think it's fair that we allow her to still work here when she's going to keep having babies and then need 9 months plus off, like, you know, or whatever amount of time you need off for maternity leave every time? And I was like, like, what do you mean? That doesn't, what are you, like, what? Like, it was so, like, and he was so confident in, like, that he was, like, gonna get me in this, like, gotcha of, like, oh, you think you, like, you care about women and giving them maternity leave, but what if it's really inconveniencing to me a few times? And I was like, this woman can only have so many children, first of all, and she can only have so many children at a time. Right? So, like, there are times where she's here. Like, it was just so bonkers to me that he was so convinced that he was gonna, like, get me to be like, yeah, you're right, you should fire women on the premise that they can and maybe will have children. Like, absurd. Never again. I don't want to ever talk to another rich person in my life.
I mean, it's the whole thing, because it, like, fundamentally changes the way you perceive the world. It's like literal science reinforces the fact that there's just something that happens to the brain. It's not inevitable. Like, there are things you can ground yourself with. But if you're not actively seeking that out, like if you're not keeping yourself in check because you don't think there's any reason to need to be, you're going to lose your sense of self and your connection to other people and, like, what is right and wrong or whatever. Because, like, society operates totally differently up there. And it's gross and kind of very uncomfortable.
It becomes like me versus everybody else. Like, and everybody else is like out to get me. They're no longer like a person. They're no longer deserving of compassion and understanding, because everybody's trying to take my money.
100%. And another thing I read in one of the other articles I read was that it was like, if you have any, like, anxieties or, like, kind of, like, insecurities, those will only be amplified by wealth, because you get so socially isolated, and because, like, your connection to others just changes in such a fundamental way that, like, if you are paranoid and think that other people are out to get you, you are going to just the wealth doesn't erase your problems. It just kind of amplifies them, honestly.
Yeah, because now they have more reason.
Yeah, because you have more to lose in your perspective of the situation. Yeah, it's all a thing.
Yeah, that's why a lot of people break up if there is like a wealth situation that happens later. Like they've been married for forever, but then one of them becomes a hoarding dragon of wealth. And so then it was like, screw you, Bezos, I'm going to leave. And I'm going to take all this money.
Yeah, and go live my life.
Donate it because money's evil.
Yeah.
I was like, what a win for like society. Yeah. What a blessing. I wish him all the unhappiness in the world. And some of the other folks like that. It's just like, yeah, it is sick. It's like a sickness. Wealth can be a sickness. And toxic masculinity is a sickness. Yeah. Consumerism, materialism.
White supremacy,
white supremacy, hallelujah. So with that, on that fun note, don't get married.
Delete your kids.
Yeah, that's it.
Or
nothing happens to kids
because you're rich. I don't know.
Oh yeah, now they can't express emotions properly because they've been rich.
Yeah,
and they have never
had a genuine conversation.
Yeah, because you don't even see your kids.
Yeah,
you're too busy.
Yeah,
sad. Bye.